If you happen to be out in your garden and you hear a bzzz, 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 let's not do a, because you never know. It might be a pollinator and we need to save all of them. They're super important. Right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast, pollination.
To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Welcome to the Backyard Gardens podcast, where we talk about all things gardening and give the information out for you to be successful in your garden, whether it's your first or your last. We are your hosts, Ben, the backyard gardener, and
Batavia, the front yard gardener.
one in the country,
One in the city.
Now get ready as we dig deep into this wonderful world of gardening as we learn to grow and grow for change. So, what is our listener question for the week, Batavia?
So we are covering off on how long do plants live? So,
Not plants, and specifically cucumbers, right?
all right, trying that once more. How long, life cycle of plants and particularly cucumbers. So we have a listener, I'm going to say her name, Emily, that asked us earlier in the week about a cucumber plant that she has that looks really good and healthy. She pruned it and she commented on our discussions around succession sowing and just inquired if she kept it healthy, will it basically produce for the entire season is the question. And so my answer, because I didn't give her my answer because you had already answered.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So,
what was your answer?
So my answer is yes, if you can keep it healthy, it will continue to produce throughout the season. So either some disease, if you will, or cold weather is going to kill it. But it's hella hard to keep cucumber plants healthy for many, many, many months.
Yeah. I mean, that was my whole thing when I was talking to her was, you know, in particular, the powdery mildew will generally take care of it. But it seems to me like they slow down a lot, no matter what, in producing.
Yeah, you know, but I mean, I guess I'm going to move myself around. I guess the question becomes how much is enough? How much is too much powdery mildew? You know, so like at some point, is it signaling to the plant enough? Right. So let me say this. I've never seen production slow down and my leaves continue to be vibrant. They always, you know, are kind of dry,
right.
You know, tattered, you know, discolored, you know. So if it's not necessarily powdery mildew, you know, what's the rust that you see on some plants? So it could be any number of those things.
Well, you know, my snow peas do the same thing. They start from the bottom and go up. And so that's kind of an issue that I have with that is, you know, as they keep growing and growing and growing, I can always tell like, okay, they're starting to get down because as you go from the base up, they start losing color. They start getting a little powdery mildew and stuff. And they just don't produce as well. And cucumbers, you know, I don't know if they're like, I mean, maybe they're technically a determinant. What do you think?
I hadn't thought about that. Huh.
You know what I mean? Like maybe it's like a low-key determinant.
I don't think that's a such thing, but I like the idea of it.
Well, let me rephrase it. It's a determinant producer, but not grower. So like, because you know, cucumber plants get big. You know, so to have them, you know, go up and keep growing, but yeah, they always seem to slow down for me. So my final answer is, I'm going to give a no. They will not grow for the whole season.
I'm going to agree with you. Well, you know, let me say this. If we have in whole season, I'm talking about 3, 4, 5, 6 months, right? Depending on where you are. If you've been able to keep cucumber plants, a single plant throughout from the point of planting it through the cold killing it, let us know because maybe we're missing something.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we are, you know, and I think, okay, I have it. I got it figured out. You start a cucumber seed and you let the you give each cucumber 5 feet of space in every direction around it. and you go out there every hour on the hour and you just trellis it just like it is and just let it climb and get it just perfect, it might do all year. How do you think that? And you can't water overhead. It can never rain. You have little umbrellas set up over it so the leaves won't get wet.
It has to be 82 degrees or higher Fahrenheit. That's Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
It can't
no
be
less.
If you calculate your temperature in Celsius, it's just not going to happen for you at all, right?
It's done. And it has to be no less than 72 degrees at night.
Yeah.
With 60% humidity.
Yeah. And
dry.
Only 2 to 3 full moons.
Right.
Which probably is pretty easy, yeah. So.
Yeah. And then you will have cucumbers all year. But I mean, seriously, that's a solid question because, I've always wondered that too because I'll grow 1 4-foot trellis, 1 4-foot across trellis, and I'll get more cucumbers than I know what to do with off of them. So, and, basically when they start dying out, I'm actually kind of thankful because I'm like, I was kind of getting tired of eating them anyways. And I mean, how many jars of pickles does one really need?
I think I have 2 more jars from last season. But the thing is, it's similar to tomatoes, right? Like if you have a healthy plant, it's going to produce a lot of tomatoes. But unfortunately, tomatoes are much more versatile compared to cucumbers, right? So I am still going to succession, so I think, depending on how space goes in my garden, because I do want them, to her point, throughout the season. But I'm going to say around August for me is when they start to peter out.
Yeah, mine
late August,
towards
early
the end of summer, when it starts getting real hot is when mine usually die out. Now, we are live on Instagram, and we did have somebody kind of chime in and say that they were able to get some Japanese longs last year, or they wimped out, but they had lemon cucumbers that produced all the way through October easily.
Oh, interesting. Lemon cucumbers, which I grew for the first time either last year or the year before. It feels like that's almost a different beast of a cucumber. Everything from size, obviously, flavor, texture. But I want to know, we won't cover this in the podcast episode, but I want to know where that person is, like what area, state, or zone. I'm curious about what that weather is like.
Do you want them to draw you a map?
No, I'd like to send them to send me a piece of mail from their county.
A copy of their
plat survey, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna need that, and we're gonna need one of your bills that tells your address, and we're gonna need to see your license, and then we'll know that it's for sure. Yeah, that's I had somebody do that to me recently. It was super annoying. I'm like, I don't get any bills in the mail anymore. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. So we do have the answer. Hey, Sacramento. That makes sense to me, though. So am I tracking the same person?
I don't know.
So if that person is in Sacramento, I can see getting cucumbers in October because November is probably just when it's starting to cool off there, if I'm judging about right. And cool off, I mean like you may be more like in the 70s because cucumbers, again, like it hot. So, do
they like it hot?
Some like it hot. All right, cool as a cucumber. I know. Let's just get past that corniness. I know where you're headed.
I wasn't even going to go there. So you're the one that did that. That's no. And I don't understand cool as a cucumber either. But so, I would, again, just to kind of reiterate that it's possible. And I think there may be different varieties too. That's another thing. There could be different varieties. But I mean, by the time I get through the summer, I've got powdery mildew. I've had Japanese beetles. You might have cucumber beetles. I mean, it's like, damn, they take a pretty bad beating, Yeah. They're like the S&M plants of the garden.
And they love it. She's on her way. She's on her way to a good start, though. So she did prune a bit, trying to keep the plant tidy. Because, I mean, come on. The cucumber plant really doesn't need all those leaves to produce. Not all of them.
You sure?
I'm positive, 100% positive.
Yeah, usually what I try to do is clean from the bottom, up maybe 2 feet. Once they start getting tall, I'll try and clean those up so that air, if you saw my story on Instagram today, it was all about airflow. And that's really important to get through because that'll help, cut down the chances of getting that powdery mildew. Yeah.
I don't have any rhyme or reason as to how I prune. It's kind of like things are getting unruly. So I'll cut a branch.
Whatever you want.
Or if I see something that starts to look unhealthy, I'll start to trim there.
Yeah. I've tried to top them in order to keep them from going too tall. Didn't work.
Okay.
So they just got tall or died.
Yeah.
So, all right. That's the listener question for today. If you're watching us live, thank you so much for joining us. And we will be right back after this break to talk about pollination. A lot of y'all asked, how can you help support the Backyard Gardens podcast? Well, we have been busy and we have created a t-shirt line just for the gardener.
To visit our shop, go to the link in the show notes and check out the t-shirts and other goodies we have.
Now, these are super special t-shirts designed just for the gardener. So enjoy. Thank you for supporting the Backyard Gardens podcast, and we'll see you guys after the harvest.
All right, it's time for the Backyard Gardens podcast fall seed giveaway. To enter, go to backyardgardenstv.com, enter your email address, and be sure to do that before August the 1st, 2021, when the giveaway closes. Good luck.
All right, pollination. So look, hold on. I have to make an announcement.
Please do.
Okay. We are doing our listener questions live on Instagram, and in the mix of trying to go live real quick, we forgot to say a couple things, and I need to get them off of my chest. Okay. We are selling t-shirts now. Check them out. Link is in the description. And then we also have an Amazon store set up of all the products that we recommend and we use for different categories in gardening. Check that out. It'll help support the podcast, and it won't cost you any extra. If you buy from that page or whatever, that shop, then it'll help support us. We'll get like a teeny sliver, no extra cost to you. And we'll keep adding stuff to it. And anytime that we say links in the show notes, that's where it's going to be. It's going to be in that link. So, because usually we don't put links for stuff that we don't like.
No.
You know, I would hope.
Yeah. Very deliberate about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And there is no rhyme or reason for when we do the listener questions online. So, you're just going to have to catch it when you catch them. Sorry. We can't stick to a schedule, and when does this episode air, Batavia?
We are welcome to summer. So we just kicked off the summer checklist and the summer mini-sodes, right? And we just welcomed summer this past weekend. So we are at June 24th for a release on this one.
Boom. June 24th, which means you can sign up for our fall seed giveaway. So, go to the website, backyardgardenstv.com, sign up for the newsletter. You'll be entered into this website and every other one. And while you're there, pick up a t-shirt. So anyways, pollination, what do you got to say about it?
I welcome it.
Do you?
Yeah. I've only ever been stung by, I don't know if it was a bee or a wasp, but something with a stinger once in my garden history. I don't know if I've ever been stung even outside of the garden. So I know that many things besides bees pollinate. But I said that to say most people, that's what they're running from. And that's where, there's that apprehension. But I welcome it. I'm pretty like stealth when I'm in the garden. So I move around as they swarm, and go from plant to plant and flower to flower. I mean, there's beauty in the idea of my garden bringing all the pollinators to the yard.
Okay, so there is a whole lot of references going on here, and this show has been reference thick. So, because when you were like, they were dropping when it's hot, I was like, oh, that's Snoop Dogg. So now we're just going through it. But
I'm in such a great mood, dude. I have to share this before we get to our next monthly update. So I'll let you know when I'm ready to share. I'll raise my hand. Go ahead.
Okay, you gonna raise your hand? Yes, ma'am. I was just gonna say I had a mental picture of you floating through the garden, just like dodging and weaving and ducking and diving through bugs and stuff. But I don't like pollination. It annoys me.
See,
because it's one of those things where it's like, I had 1 year where I literally didn't have any pollination going on, and I had to go out and like hand pollinate all of my cucumbers and stuff, and it was awful.
Yeah.
So, but then it opened my eyes about changing that.
Yeah. So, pollination and then pollinators, right? So they're
right.
It's kind of separate and apart, right? So I have still not yet hand pollinated, and I vow to not hand pollinate this year. check back in later this summer so I can let you know if I hand pollinate it. So, I mean, I'm carefree with it. I guess that's the reason why. And I am nostalgic about, again, bugs and insects and things flying and things that wouldn't normally be in my yard, but I have a garden and they want to come here.
Yeah.
So I'm nostalgic about that. It's one of the stressless things in my garden. I recognize there probably will be a day, and we'll cover off on this in a bit, where I'm going to see low production perhaps. Some plant isn't going to be pollinated properly, and I'll deal with it if it comes up.
Yeah. I've been hand pollinating my zucchini just to make sure. You know what I mean? I don't want to take any chances because I want to get it. But without further ado, let's jump into a little bit of this. So I have a confession to make. When I first heard about pollinators, the first year I had cucumbers and I had no cucumbers. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And then I read like, oh, you don't have any pollination going on. I thought, well, where are the bees at? Oh my God, it's the end of the world. The bees are dead. Now look, we all are aware that there is a crisis going on about bees, right? But they only account for 35% of the pollinators. And we've
double-checked that statistic, so...
That is, let me go ahead and say, that is reported by the United Nations FAO Pollination 2011 on climate change study. So, I don't want to be accused of making no woo-woo up, which I've done in the past. Like back when I was in high school, I'd be making some stuff up and put it on paper, but I wouldn't do it here.
I mean, you're like citing sources. I love it, man. Yeah.
Well, and then but apparently bees are still responsible for 80 to 90% of global food, 70 to 90%. So that's a little crazy that there's only 35% of all pollinators are bees, but they still account for most of our pollination.
Yeah, I may need a minute with that in my head. We should have said this before the break so I could calculate that. Like,
oh, there's no calculation. Just go with it. You can't calculate that. Okay. Well, you might be. You're smarter than I am.
Yeah. Well, it's just by a smidge on a late afternoon, but other than that, actually, in most mornings, I'm smarter than you. In the afternoons, man, you're the genius.
No, you fall apart pretty quick. So, and then the question that I had next was, well, how many pollinators are there? And this was eye-opening to me. Take a guess of how many pollinators are in the world.
Are we in the... it has to be hundreds of thousands.
I said to make a guess.
Okay, so 690,000. No, okay, that's low.
That's high.
Oh, that's high?
200,000.
All right, well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that source.
Guessed. I would have never guessed. That is by the NRCS Wildlife Habitat Management Institute.
So that's
for native
total
pollinators.
Quantity or total unique pollinators?
Species.
Okay.
200,000 different species.
Yep. Okay. I'll dig it.
So, yeah. And now that includes everything, not just bugs. So that's mammals. When you go out and pollinate, you become a pollinator. So, well, you're not a pollinator because you can't, you haven't pollinated,
Wait, what are we talking about? This is starting to get, what's happening here?
I'm correcting course because I was like, wait a second, this is going to get dark quick.
Or it could be a sign of life.
Right. Hey, it could be. You never know. So it's just interesting to think about because, I always thought about bees and we're all aware of the bee crisis. So
let me ask you, I feel like a default to fruiting plants, a default question, or a default response to issues with fruiting plants is you probably don't have, these things probably aren't being pollinated. So when someone's like, oh, I'm not getting any insert, vegetable.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's a default answer. And I wonder, like, the accuracy in that being the answer versus it's been ingrained in us that I go back to your reference about the bees. So it's kind of like, the hidden message.
Yeah. You know what I just realized? I hate to interrupt you, but I installed that ceiling fan last year that we cheered about, and it's not on, and I'm hot.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it because I turned mine on and I said, the hell with the sound. They realize it's June. They understand.
Oh, yeah. Dude, it's 90 degrees outside, and it just finished thunderstorming. It's hot.
Yeah, cheers. But, we're getting to 90 today, too.
It's one of those things where, you're exactly right, though. Damn, I just lost my train of thought. Kick me off. Help me out here.
I was just talking about how our default response, and it's the...
Yes.
Okay. Well, dang. That's how good I am. It's still almost morning. Yeah.
As soon as you said it, yeah. So the whole thing with that is, and it's a real easy way to test. You know what I mean? Now, it's not a quick test, but it's go out and pollinate it and see. You know, become a pollinator.
Yeah.
And see. And if you get something, then you know, okay, this is the deal. But I know that year that I didn't have cucumbers, and this was in New England, I didn't see any bees that year. None. And then that's what kind of led me down the rabbit hole of like, okay, there's not just bees that pollinate, it's other things that pollinate. But the bees are the biggest things that I've seen that pollinate. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there is, and we're talking about things that require things that aren't necessarily self-pollinating, right? So things that require some insect, bug, person, someone's a paintbrush for the act of pollination to occur. And I mean, I don't know if it's just basically where I live. I've just been very garden lucky. I can remember maybe once I had poor cucumber performance, and this is in my early days of container gardening, and the plant looked bad, you know, so I just attributed it to that. So, and I'm just using cucumbers as a reference. I did have some bad luck with the tomato plant once.
Well, you know, last year I didn't have cucumbers either, and I did not attribute that to pollinators because, again, just like you said, the plant just looked bad. Yeah. You know, and then whenever I did get a cucumber, I had like pickle worms in it, and it was just, you know, it was just one of those. It was destined not to fail. But you know, if you're not fruiting, it can be a phosphate issue. Yeah. You know, the P and the NPK. So that could be a situation too, because that is what directly is responsible for feeding your plants to make fruits. So that's always something that can be, you know, that is an issue that you could kind of steer in that direction. But both of these methods of either hand pollinating or adding phosphate are going to take time to figure out, which we don't have a lot of time.
Not in an individual garden season, no.
No, you don't. You know, you have, when you notice that your cucumber's bad, you better go start a seed somewhere and get ready to transplant it if you have to. You know what I mean? Because that's how it is. So, well,
this kind of also goes back to giving your plants the best chance. I have some cucumbers that I started inside, and cucumber plants I started inside. And I've planted a couple of them, and then some others I still have in their nursery pot, you know, 6-cell or whatever. And I think they got hit by a little bit of low 40s, high 30s. We had like a temperature dip. And I think what I see is some cold damage. And in my mind, I'm saying, you know what, just toss them. Like, don't worry about planting those, because how many weeks is it going to be before I realize, oh, this plant isn't healthy, versus just starting anew, right? We're in the heat of summer now. Go ahead and drop, especially for something that's fast growing. I don't want to focus all of this on cucumbers, but it's like such a great example when you're talking about, you know, plants that require pollination.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can go into a number. I mean, like my zucchini, for instance. Like, that's the most infuriating one in itself, because you go out there and you see a zucchini, and half of it's like, you know, as big as your finger, and half of it's rotted and the other half's not. That means it had bad pollination.
Yeah.
You know, and the top, do you want to know what the top pollinators are?
Sure.
This is eye-opening.
Okay.
So, I mean, bees, yes. Hummingbirds are one. Butterflies, flies, beetles, which means ladybugs, any of that. Lizards, specifically this one is a blue-tailed gecko, but that's like, you know, Africa, so that's very localized. And then moths are the big pollinators. So that's really eye-opening when you hear that, because I mean, how many times did you see a moth in your garden or something flying around? You're like, what the hell? You know, and the first thing that you might think is that bad?
Well, you know how I feel about specifically the cabbage moth, but generally. But
just in general, like when you see something that's not a butterfly or a bee, you think, well, do I need to get rid of this? So, it's interesting to think about like that, because we shouldn't just jump into getting rid of what we see because we don't understand what it is.
Yeah, because it could be helping your garden in a way you don't necessarily understand. And I mean, I think just, again, to get really digging in there, if it's not harming, let it enjoy what you've created. Right. So there's a part that we garden for the sheer food, but there's also many of us that garden for, contributing to nature in a different way. And so, I mean, the cabbage moth, I'm going to kill at every turn. So obviously I'm not now.
Yeah.
No, I still,
and you should though.
I still think it's pretty cool when it's flying around things that aren't my brassicas,
So do you want to know, have you heard about the company that is trying, because, the bees are going extinct is the common thread. Do you know how they're trying to overcome this?
No, I've not heard.
They are trying to create robotic bees that will go out and do it. And they're going to set them free, which sounds like just such a great idea. I mean, if you could please just create some monster and put it out there.
I feel like I've heard this, but I just don't know if I heard it like in the real world or if it was a movie. Like this sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah. Well, it's just like they down in Key West, they released genetically modified mosquitoes that will, when they mate with the native mosquitoes, they will cause them not to reproduce, which will drastically cut their numbers down. So, but when you introduce a species, and even if it's a robotic species or not, look into it and think about it like this. Look at Australia. They introduced that the toad to Australia. I don't remember what toad it is, but whatever it is, it's like a plague, and they're everywhere. Nothing. It doesn't have a predator, so nothing will kill it. So it's like taking over. So, do we really want to mess with our pollination system like that and introduce something that could really cause a problem?
Yeah, but go back to 70 to 90% of our food source.
Yeah.
So that's.
And
the question is, what's in between, right? So.
Well, what can we do to kind of help the situation? What can you do as a gardener? What can we do to help it?
I mean, I think the number one and the easiest is to create environments that that bees enjoy. So are we going to talk about flowers?
Yeah. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We are. I mean, because that's the whole idea is, I feel like as a gardener, our job is to kind of help with the situation, because if you look back through history, and we'll get to your flowers in a second, but if you look back through history, everything was around growing food. Like we had every single person grew food to feed themselves back in the day. And then it went away to these factory farms, and now it's coming back to where more and more people are, growing food for themselves. But as we grow food, there's other lands that are being eaten up and taken away by industrialization that we need to put back. We can't just knock a building down, but those wildflowers and all that stuff that's been coming off of those lands, we can put back in our lands to help out. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there is, again, I'm going to get, very tree hugging. I said it. You're expecting something from the garden that you plant, right? And so while you're giving time and money, right, other resources, a part of that is, again, you giving back, right? So if that means you're planting a few more flowers to bring those pollinators in, bees and other, then do that, right? It's for the greater good, but it's also for the good of your garden. There's a tinge of selfishness sometimes that we have as humans. We want what we want, and we don't want to give anything more to get that, right? And so this isn't just the big pitch to say flowers. This is the big pitch to say, like, are you really killing the bees that are in your garden? quick story. I'm doing sunflowers this year. I skipped them. I did like sunflowers in a pot last year, and I skipped them because of my disdain for my garden squirrels and the way that once the sunflowers got big, they would just eat the face of the sunflowers. But I love sunflowers, so I planted them again this year. 2 or 3 years ago when I planted them, I had one sitting in the back by my garage, which is also by my neighbor's garage, right? So what happened? Her and her family were coming in from the garage and bam, bees attack, right? It only takes one, for someone that's afraid of them. And so what am I doing? Am I going to stop planting sunflowers altogether because the bees love them? No, I'm just going to place them somewhere else, right? Small things like I don't put flowers around where my male person has to walk around, right? So there are ways to do a thing to get to that, again, greater good. I know it sounds very Lifetime movie, Disney, land like, but that's what it is.
I don't think it does at all. I think it sounds like a thought-provoking, thought-inspired, well-planned situation where you saw an issue, you have an end, you want to help a bee, and you don't want these people to get stung, so you just work around it. And I think that's amazing. And, we all need to be like that. I mean, I saw, have you ever been usually at the end of the year, you go out and you see like a dead bee on a flower?
Yeah.
Do you know why that is?
Did they freeze? I don't know. Why is that?
No. So the bees that you generally see in your garden are not honeybees. Okay. They will be like mason bees or something, and they're loners.
Okay.
They don't live in big hives. So those bees have literally just collected pollen, done whatever they do until they die because they don't have anywhere to live. So we need, you can create a space for them to go live. And that might, that will help them and help you have a stronger bee population in your garden too. So because I saw it and I thought it was the same thing where they would like freeze to death, but no, they just literally just die. I found one on the porch the other day. He just died. And I'm like, damn, man, we got this bee problem and this bee just died. Like straight had a stroke on my porch. You know what I mean? So it's not good.
I was just looking up.
You with me?
Yeah, I was just looking up the life cycle, like how long do bees live?
What's the final answer?
The average lifespan of a bee depends on the hive's activity when she is born, and it's 40 days during the active season and 5 months if born before the season. But I think that kind of goes back to those bees have a place to live, right? They have a hive that they're going back to. But queen bees, hey, live an average of 3 years. So there's that.
Jerks. Yeah, we can't have that.
Yeah. Oh, one more quick note. Drones live until they mate or for 90 days. I mean, I guess that's probably an exciting life or a pretty sad life.
I mean,
you got 90 days or you got, Yeah,
you gonna have to get you some in 90 days, or that's it, boy.
No, in all seriousness, I think that when we talk about pollination, so when did you, because you have a science background or a background in science, when did you start paying attention to pollination in your garden?
2009. 2009-ish. Okay. Yeah. So, and that was just me paying attention. Like I didn't understand it, and I still don't understand it completely, but over the years, it's just kind of taking more steps. And then when I've gotten to this garden, that's when I was like, okay, this is going to be a longer term garden. Let's make it somewhere where we can definitely get some, bring in the bees, give them somewhere to live. Somebody was saying to me not too long ago, well, why don't you just get like a hive and collect honey, and then you'll be able to raise bees. And I'm like, that's not the bee. I mean, those bees are important, but that's not the ones that, you need to be worried. It's all the other pollinators, the moths and all that stuff too. That's really important. Yeah. So, and that's the big thing I want about this particular episode is I know we talk a lot about bees because they are, the spotlight, but that's not all there is for pollination.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. I think
it's important.
So we talked about what can a gardener do, flowers. a gardener can also be careful about what they spray and, you know, kind of how they treat issues in their garden.
Or when they spray.
Or take the words right out of my mouth.
Hey, look, I had to steal it from you.
Absolutely. Hey, that's a tag team. Good job.
Yeah. Tag team. So let's talk about that then. What do you spray?
The only thing I'm spraying at this point this year so far is neem oil.
Yeah. I spray neem oil and BT. That's what and they're both organic. They're not supposed to hurt the bees, but at the same time, I don't want to spray the bees.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, oh wait, no, I'm using insect dust on my, I'm using, I don't know what brand I'm using. It is an organic dust, but I'm using it on my zucchini.
Okay. Okay.
Which is tricky because everything is right next to the flowers. So you have to be very careful. But, you know, when are the bees active?
Morning. Good morning.
Yeah.
Just like me.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, you know, morning to early afternoon. So if you're applying any of this stuff, and I mean, even if you're using a non-organic chemical, which you know, usually we say like, hey, go for it. Do what you got to do. Be you. But in this case, I'll say like, be careful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because this is one aspect where like you don't want to just wipe everything out. No. You know, there's literally an ecosystem brewing out there. So just be careful what you put in. And that could just mean reading the directions. You know, maybe there's something you like to use and it says safe for bees. There's a little emblem that says be safe that you can see on products and stuff like that. So, but applying these things late in the evening can help. A lot of times I go out right before sunset.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I typically don't. And that
you go out there at like 5 a.m. and just spray shit down. Like, get the fuck out of the way, bees. Here I come.
Oh, kind of, sort of. No. And it's so I don't, where I'm spraying neem oil right now is on covered plants. So if you're inside of there, man, I'm suffocating you. So I have the fabric that I've covered some of my plants with, and I'm spraying the leaves, and then I'm covering it back. So the reality is, and these are things that don't need pollination. So leafy greens and things. So I'm trying to minimize kind of bees coming in I'll say bees coming in contact with it because other things are able to get inside and mill about. And the only reason, there's no real logic behind it other than I'm at my best in the morning. I'm doing most times my garden chores in the morning. So it's just convenience, to be frank. Well,
correct me if I'm wrong. Neem oil, the point of it is it makes the plant taste bad so that the animals get it leave. That's the only, like, it doesn't kill anything.
Yeah, that shit stinks too, boy.
Yeah. You know, I kind of like it a little bit maybe, but it's not terrible. Now that BT stuff I use is kind of rough, but so it doesn't kill on contact, which is important to, you know, to understand, because that's the whole thing behind this, is that killing on contact is rough.
Yeah.
You know, that can be a dangerous game. And I mean, you have bees that live underground too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, bees can live underground, so it's like when you put stuff like fertilizers in your garden, in your yard, and stuff like that, you got to be careful. Or weed killers, and specifically insect killers. You know, my neighbor came to me at one point and was like, "Hey, man, you got bugs that come in your house?" And I mean, you've seen where I live, and I was like, "Yeah, I got bugs that come in." He's like, "Man, I got this stuff. You just spray it all around your house, and it'll just kill everything that comes in." I'm like, "Well, is it worth it?"
Yeah, I hear you.
You know, I'll kill the 5 or 6 bugs a week that come in my house versus every single thing out there. So it's one of those things, like, I made that conscious decision, you know. So if I had a infestation, we might be speaking a different tune, but we don't.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a balance. I'm going to take a quick pause and just tell you that the cage baby and the 3 beds inside of the cage baby, and this is completely unrelated to pollination, have been mulched. And I think I may be in love with leaf mulch. I'm just saying it.
Well, so it's not unrelated to pollination. Can you believe that?
Ah, look at that. Of course I can. That was my plan from the beginning.
You planned that, right?
Oh, yeah.
You don't even know what I was going to say.
That's beside the point.
One of my followers on Instagram, we talked a lot over the fall, and they're really big in the pollinators. And I believe I mentioned this on the podcast too, but her thing, and it is a she, so I am correct this time, was to not rake your leaves up so soon and let them sit. So, because, things live in the leaves and lay eggs. That's the important thing, is they lay eggs in those leaves. So, it's something that's important to remember too. Like, a lot of us we're so anxious to go out there and rake leaves.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I rake the leaves in my yard because I want to make mulch and whatnot, so compost.
Yeah, I was just cringing because it's like, don't rake them so quickly, but then it's like, and then I'm putting it in some high speed blade to shred it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, good luck.
Right, but I guess the whole point, like, the way I look at it is, like, if you have something that doesn't really need to be raked up, maybe you shouldn't rake it up right away. Yeah. Maybe you should just take a break. Yeah, who doesn't want to sit back and drink that hot latte in the summer, in the wintertime? Not the summer, good God.
I had hot coffee this morning and it was a mistake, yeah. There is the desire for humans to interrupt, right? To get on top of it, to do it really quickly, the desire to have a neat and manicured space, right? Which is a whole different podcast episode, so I'm not going to go off that cliff.
No, you know what? That's not a podcast episode. I don't want to talk about that shit.
Yeah, it's a whole series. Is it a different podcast altogether? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the lawn podcast that we might not ever make. Welcome to Backyard Lawns, where we talk about growing grass.
Yeah. So I can respect the idea of don't rake it so quickly. But then I have to say, all right, if not so quickly, how long are we talking? Because if I'm leaving it there and it's still not going to benefit me in the way that it's supposed to, I'm just, leaving it there for... That's the part that always gives me pause. Because it's like, oh, don't be so quick to rake them up. And I'm hoping that person's listening now. Maybe they can give us a few more details around that. Or give them again if they shared them originally with you. How long is long enough?
So the first... the last time I really remember was like real early spring, about the time people would go out and be like, I got to get my yard ready, and the argument was, or maybe it was late winter. I think it was late winter, was let it sit there until it gets warm and let these things hatch and get out and then go out there. So, and I mean, in all reality, like, if you're worried about your grass, like, it's not going to kill your grass to let it sit there for a while. It's like your grass is dormant anyways. Yeah. So, and it's the same with, everything else. Like, is your flower bed, if you don't get all the leaves out of it right away, is there going to be a problem? Like, it's the middle of winter, ain't nothing growing in there.
Even there are a few leaves that are still milling about now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's the important part. So, and then that goes into, like my pollinator garden I made. So, do you have what you consider a pollinator garden?
I do not. And it's actually a pretty...
And why don't you?
Because my space is limited and I have to make tough decisions here at Be Better Garden. And most times they err on the side of flowers that I love and food that I want to grow. So there's some flowers that I love that, sure, things fly around them, but they're not drawn to them like magnets. My question though was going to be, how close is this pollinator garden to the place where you're trying to have pollination occur? Mine? Yeah.
8 feet away.
Okay.
And then in the other by the wild garden, 4 feet away.
Okay.
Is that close enough, or should I get closer?
I have no idea, but it sounds close. It sounds almost perfect.
It's about as close as I can get it. I mean, my pollinator garden I started last year, And I had this romantic idea that I was going to throw out wildflower seeds, and it was just going to be this beautiful little meadow. And it would just reseed itself every year, and it would be gorgeous, and everybody would look at it and love it. And then I got one flower.
Oh man, I was trying to stop you. I wanted it to be like a hard stop because that was beautiful and romantic, and I didn't want I didn't want you to ruin it for all of us. But thanks.
I ruined it. But so then this year happens, and I after last year, I was like, I'm just going to throw seeds in there and see what happens. And this year, things are starting to come back now. We've got some mysteries. We got some stuff growing. And next year, we'll get more and more. And then it will eventually just become this wild garden, wild flower garden. And, even though it's not in my garden, it's right next to it. It's just one more place for Mr. B to sit down and take a rest and have a nibble. Yeah. And then, over by the other garden, I put salvia in. Well, last year I put a salvia plant in, and that bitch had no less than 10 bees on there from 5 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night every day. And I said, that's it. So I grew a bunch of salvia seeds, which happens to be a very easy perennial flower seed to start yourself. And it reseeds itself and spreads. So I figured, why not? And so we put that out there, and everything that we kind of grew by seed this year was specifically, and this is for flowers, geared towards attracting pollinators. So, and they're pretty, don't get me wrong, but they're not the big, beautiful, roses or something like that. I mean, I don't know if bees will eat off of roses or whatever, but
I don't know. My neighbor has 3 different sets of beautiful roses, and she's not mentioned bees, but they may be over there. There is a comment going back to the leaves that's connected, I think, and it's weeds. So I like to keep a tidy space. So I do typically pull weeds. There's typically I'll do it after the rain because it's easier to pull those weeds. But there's some things that I leave because I'm like, that looks like a flower. Right. And so even things that you would consider a weed, which is just basically something growing that you don't want in that space. That's what we're calling a weed. It could still bloom and it could still attract pollinators. Now, I'm not asking you to let your garden go wild and have, all kinds of knee-high things, in your space. But I am saying, again, let's not be so quick. I have, one of my favorites, and there are many of them. I know what you're thinking. I hear you. Snapdragon flowers. I started a bunch of them from seed, and they're doing really well. This is the second year that I found Snapdragon volunteers in some random place. Last year, it was within a crack of the concrete for my patio in the backyard. So crack, insert dirt, seed comes around, right? It pops up. Now the other space is the only space along my fence line that I haven't weeded yet. And as I was taking out the trash the other day, guess what I see? Snapdragon. Yeah. So I know what that flower looks like once it gets to the point of, the bulbs or whatever.
Now, do you have pollinators that go into that?
I'm not sure. I don't know that
I haven't seen any of mine. I don't know that I've
noticed. But again, beautiful.
Yeah, I grew mine in memory of my grandfather. That was his favorite.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. So, my grandmother, she died at 101. She made it 101 this year by one day. And she always had this huge chamomile.
Canna lily?
No. Camellia bush.
Okay.
At her house. Camellia bush.
Okay.
So I've been on a hunt trying to find one of those that's affordable. Good luck with inflation. But, that's kind of, it's in my mind, it's precious to have like memories of your family planted out there and stuff. So
yeah, that's the only reason why every year I think twice about petunias. And that was one that I'm not even certain that my grandmother never communicated it as her favorite, but she planted them every year. And so it's not in my top favorite, like personally, but I can't let a garden season go without buying petunias because as soon as I see them, there's that memory. And then when you bring it to your own garden, that memory is with you daily. So it's super duper sweet.
So, all right. And then what else? So we've talked about how you can help how you can not kill them.
Oh, one more note about just, again, things you're adding to your garden. A friend told me this and I looked it up and she was spot on. So I have a little bird bath in the front yard. So cute. And she suggested that I put like some type of stone or a larger rock inside of it because bees and some other things, like we're not talking, the birds can get in and out, but I actually have found a floating bee, you know, at least once, right? So they aren't the best swimmers, let's just say. And so what ends up happening is it gives them an opportunity to stand on that rock and then, you know,
take a sip.
Yeah, exactly. So
technically what you have now is a butterfly bath. That's what those are for. They make like specific butterfly baths, which is nothing more than a bird bath with a rock in it.
Oh, so I've created a butterfly bath.
You've created a butterfly bath.
It lets them dry their wings too.
Yeah. So if you go to, it's the National Wildlife Conservancy website. You can actually, if you pay the money, there's a list of all the requirements you have to have at your house in order to get it certified as a conservancy place. And one of them is creating a bird bath and then a butterfly type bath, you know, and then feeding the birds and stuff like that. So we actually went through everything, and then I didn't even make a bird bath. I put one out there, and then we didn't get any birds come to it. And we figured out why, because we have wetlands around us, so there's always like a little bit of water. Yeah. And the birds just go out there and naturally and do it. So we can't actually get our yard certified because it already has the stuff on there, and we didn't create it. So it's kind of messed up.
No, that's too bad. I'm watching a bird, not a butterfly, drink out of the fountain right now, or the bath. I also noticed that birds drink out of my garden hose, the spout. I'll walk on the side of the house and they'll be flying away, coming just from, because it drips a little bit, you know, so.
We haven't done an episode on birds yet, and I would love to do one.
I'll think about it.
Yeah, think about it. I respect that answer because it's kind of tough, you know, it's like, oh, great, you know, but there's something about birds. I know in COVID, I can't remember the meme I saw, but it was like, whatever it was like white people would be all sitting there watching their bird feeder talking about, well, I got a new bird, and it was just like, yeah, that sounds about right. So
yeah, there's you remember the movie The Birds, black and white movie?
Oh yeah,
dude,
Alfred Hitchcock.
Talk about something that still frightens me, like something from your childhood that frightens you.
So my mom is terrified of birds, like hide under the couch screaming, and my cat used to bring them in alive and drop them at her feet. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, we had so much fun with that fear. Yeah. All right, look, I think everybody needs to just take care of their pollinators. I mean, come on, and you know, do your part, because if you didn't do your part, okay, if you did not do your part to save the pollinators, then we would not have an opportunity for Batavia to give us the recipe of the day. No pollination, no food.
Nicely done. All right.
What you got?
I'm going in. We're going to get in and get out. So we're going to do a grilled zucchini. But it's just not any old grilled zucchini. It's balsamic grilled zucchini. All right. So I'm going to read from this recipe because that's how I roll. Serving size, let's say 4 people. We're going to take 2 nicely sized zucchini, not the huge ones that are, you know, full of seeds that are kind of tough inside. I'll say maybe the size of your hand or a little bit longer. You're going to quarter those lengthwise, cut it in half, cut each of those halves in half. We're going to take a couple of teaspoons of olive oil, the rest of the ingredients, garlic powder, Italian seasoning, salt, and then we're going to reserve 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. All right, so we're grilling. I put together, and I mentioned this last year, this huge gas grill. And I love that it's a gas grill, but I hate that it's huge. But either way, if you're firing it up for charcoal, that's fine. I'm going to turn on my gas grill. I'm going to go like a medium low on the dial. I'm not going to fire that thing all the way up. I've cut my zucchini. I'm going to brush, which could mean with a brush. It could mean with your hands. It could mean with a paper towel. The olive oil onto the zucchini. I'm going to sprinkle the garlic powder, the Italian seasoning, and the salt onto it. So I'm seasoning that up. The grill is already preheated. Remember, we turned it on to medium low. We're going to put that onto the grill, and then about 2 to 3 minutes. So we don't want this kind of slimy and really, really soft. We still want there to be some firmness to it. Once we've had 2 to 3 minutes on each side, I'm going to brush that balsamic vinegar on it. Now, this is the key. You're going to do this while it's still cooking, right? So we want that balsamic vinegar to kind of be seared into the zucchini, and we want the grill to be able to do that. We're only cooking these when we're ready to eat. Don't let this sit on the counter, on your table for hours. Do this just before you eat, and let me know what the flavor tastes like. Just a different spin on it. There are a bunch of ways to eat zucchini. I'm not crazy about all of them, but this is one I enjoy.
Yeah. You want to hear something funny?
No.
Okay. You change your mind yet?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you know that I've been successful with zucchini this year, and I've been pretty happy about it.
Oh, I don't remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, well, I've gotten like 4 or 5 zucchinis now, and I'm kind of already tired of eating them. So this is going to be a welcome adjustment. You know, it's and the reason why we grow is so Miss Gardner can put it into zucchini bread.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, otherwise, like, it's one of those things, like, it just gets old, you know, and gets tired.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those low flavor vegetables, right? So, you know, it's very high in water content, right?
Yeah.
And you really have to dress it up for it to be really desirable. And that's where it can get overly complicated. It could get heavy on the oils, you know. So I think for this one, what do we use? A couple of teaspoons of olive oil, just enough to give it that brown when you put it on the grill. And it's playing around. It goes good
on the grill because, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, then you're playing around with just adding another splash of flavor with the balsamic vinegar, you know. Yeah,
and I mean, when you put on the grill, the water content, it allows it to cook just right, so you can get a little bit crispy. So I like it on the grill, actually. So I did cook on the grill the other day, and I was like, yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So, but if I didn't hand pollinate it, then I wouldn't have to worry about it. I have a lot of rotten ones. So
that is a disappointing sight. That's almost as bad as seeing a tomato that's rotten on the bottom, blossoming right. Yeah. I know that we are supposed to be done with our subject completely, but I forgot one thing. Okay.
Quickly. You know, when you hand pollinate, you can use a paintbrush like a lot of people do. I actually use Q-tips because I can go from one plant, you know, stay in one species and then go to another species with another side or another Q-tip and still keep them from cross-pollinating with anything if I had to. So
excellent point.
Yeah. So it sucks that it's at the end, but you know, bonus if you made it this far.
Welcome to the future of your garden and hand pollination.
Yeah. I hope that I don't have to go too deep into it though. But I've been getting a kick out of doing it with the zucchini just because it's like it's a win and it makes me feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's serving you well. I know this is important to you this year, so
it is. You know, I'll take a win. Because I've had plenty of losses in my life.
This is true.
Yeah, and real quick, before we end, we got like a minute left. What the hell, Batavia?
Oh,
what the hell?
Yeah, dude.
What the hell? And you just gonna act like, oh yeah.
And look, I'm still not talking about it. Here we are, a whole nother hour.
I know.
All right, so everyone listening, I shared on Instagram a picture of one of my favorite garden beds, number 15. Of the things I was growing in that bed, celery was included. And I know you're thinking, what the hell? This is the first time I've mentioned celery to any of you. And it seems that it's the first time I've mentioned it to my dear friend, young Ben. And for that, I apologize.
Yeah, y'all think we talk a lot on the podcast? You ain't seen nothing, and she still hadn't told me about what the hell. I don't even feel special anymore.
This wasn't even one of those things like it's like, all right, I'm gonna see how it goes. Like I keep on forgetting it, and it's every freaking where too. Like I have it tucked in everywhere, you know.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how it goes because I flirted with the idea of growing it, and I'm just not completely sold. So.
It's a longer season. I started it indoors, so yeah, well. I can't guarantee I'm going to update you. At least you know now. Just know at some point I was growing celery.
That shit's depressing. All right, everybody. I'm going to go drown myself in my sorrows because my best friend is hiding things from me. But,
I'm so sorry, best friend.
Until next time, you guys take care of the bees. Love them. Check out our links. Help support the podcast. Grow something good. Eat something good. Batavia, tell them something sweet.
See ya.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you want to see what we're up to or just stay up to date on all the announcements regarding the show or anything gardening, then you can follow us on Instagram at Backyard Gardens TV.
We love seeing what you guys are doing, so use hashtag BYG Podcast in your posts, and we'll be sharing your gardens with the Backyard Gardens community.
And check us out on YouTube at Backyard Gardens, where we will post this show, all of our other shows, clips, and then also some gardening tips and just gardening entertainment. And you can see us at our website at backyardgardenstv.com. But that's it for today's show. So help us as we learn to grow and grow for change. And until next time, we'll catch you guys later. We'll call this one a wrap.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.